get started with the official business. I wonder if we could begin the way we usually do. If you'll all stand, please, and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Get into the merits of the business tonight. Let's just see where we stand at this point. As you know, there are two articles that are on the agenda for this evening. One is the budget that I'm sure most of you know at this point passed yesterday during the ballot voting. So we will pass over that one and move on to what is Article 18, which is the bond issue proposed for the new fire station facility. But before we get into that, let's talk about how we're going to handle that. I'd like to have all of the discussion that takes place come through the chair here, just so that we can avoid any conversations back and forth between people. If you need to talk with someone, please just step outside for the moment and do that. But let's handle the discussion this way, and your questions this way, if you would, please. Everybody who has registered will have an opportunity to speak, and we'll ask you to step up to the microphone if you're able to do that. Just line up behind the microphone, and we'll take you in the order that you come up. When you get there, please state your name, because we do keep track of that for the minutes of the meeting. We'll ask everyone to speak the first time before anyone asks to speak again, to give everyone a chance to be heard. This is an important issue, and we want to give everyone a chance to speak. So we'll start by reading the article as it's been posted. I'll read that, and then I'll ask whether there's a motion under the article. I'm guessing that there will be. And we will then ask for a second to the motion. And at that point, we'll give the person making the motion the opportunity to speak first, or to defer to someone else to speak toward the motion. Once the presentation about the motion has been completed, we'll then open the floor to general discussion. Once the debate about the motion is concluded, we'll have a secret written ballot using your yes or no ballots. We have the ballot box up here. Yes, it's empty. So we'll start that way and count on you to fill it up. We will keep the polls open for an hour. So if you want to stay, you're certainly welcome to do that. But if you voted and need to leave, I'm sure you'll hear the results of the outcome. It requires the secret written ballot because it is a bond issue. And we're going to keep the polls open for an hour to give everybody a chance to vote, even some people who might come in a little bit later. In order for the motion to pass, it will require 2/3 of the people casting ballots. Not the number of people who've registered, because some people may not vote, but 2/3 of the actual votes cast. And we will make that determination here as soon as the voting has stopped. If anyone offers an amendment to the motion, they'll need to do that in writing. We have written amendment motions up here in case that comes up. You'll need to fill that out with the specifics of the proposed amendment and indicate your name there. We'll need a second to any proposed amendment, and then we'll give the person making the amendment the ability to speak first. Then we'll ask for any other comments that might be made, and we'll pursue that until we're ready to vote on the proposed amendment. If the amendment passes, we'll then act on the motion as amended. If it doesn't pass, we'll go back to the original motion and either continue the debate on that or be ready to vote at that point. There is a procedure known as calling the question. That's a motion to cut off debate. I'm not going to entertain a motion to do that until everybody has had a chance to speak the first time. So you don't need to worry that if you're not in the first 5 or 10 people, your comments are not going to be heard. We're going to give everyone a chance to speak at least once before we entertain a motion to call the question. But if that motion is made and seconded, there'll be no debate about it. It requires a 2/3 vote in order to pass. If it passes, that's the end of the discussion, and we would then move on to voting on the status of the motion at that point. Okay, finally, I just want to say, as we always do, that we're counting on a civil discussion about the issue tonight. We've never had any problem with that before. I refer to that as the Peterson Protocol in honor of our former moderator, Walter Peterson, who led this body for many years so effectively and diplomatically, and we're going to do it the same way here. All right, are there any questions before we get started? Okay, well, thank you. So, you have a question? Okay, would you mind stepping up, John, if you would? Pardon me? I hope somebody can provide those. I didn't bring my phone, so I can't look it up. But if anyone wants to give us that kind of an update, their comments come before anyone else's. So, okay. So let's get started. It's proposed under Article 18, entitled Municipal Campus and Fire and Ambulance Facility Bond, $11,670,193, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $11,670,193 for the purpose of designing, engineering, permitting, constructing, and interior fit-out of a municipal campus and fire and ambulance facility located off of Elm Street, $10,570,193 of such sum to be raised through the issuance of bonds or notes under and in compliance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33:1 and following, as amended, and with a remainder of $1,100,000 to come from fund balance, to authorize the Board of Selectmen to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver such bonds or notes and to determine the rate of interest thereon, and the maturity and other terms thereof, as shall be in the best interest of the town, to authorize the Board of Selectmen to apply for, obtain, and accept federal, state, or any other such aid, grants, gifts, or revenue source that may become available for said project, and to comply with all laws applicable to said project, and to take any other action necessary to carry out any vote hereunder, or any other action relative thereto, and further to raise and appropriate the sum of $305,000 for the first bond payment. So, under Article 18, is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Tyler Ward. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Second by Bill Taylor. All right, so Tyler, would you like to speak or introduce someone else to do so?
Thanks, Phil. First, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. This is a very important meeting, a very important issue, and we need a lot of your support. I'd like to introduce the board up here. We have Bill Kennedy. Congratulations for winning your new term. Bill Taylor. We also have Town Clerk Linda Guyette and Sandy Williams over there. And then you're meeting the checklist, supervisor of the checklist, Kathy Sullivan, Denise Sweet, and Carol Lennox, so be kind to them. We have our budget committee over here on your left, John Parkhurst, Carl Mazzino, Mandy Sliver, Leslie Lewis. I see Al Lennox was in the line here. And Mary Clark over there. Thanks, everybody. So, Al's over there, yeah. So, these are the people that worked on that budget that you all graciously passed yesterday. So thank you for that, and thank you for all your hard work and all the volunteer work that they're doing. Now, did anybody else's jaw, raise your hand if your jaw dropped when you first heard a fire station was going to cost $23 million. Yeah, we were all kind of shocked and taken aback. But I can tell you, since that number came out, a lot of people in this room, a lot of people in the community have really come together as an incredible team and just value engineered this project and really worked their tails off. A lot of volunteer hours from many people in the community. And this project will be another gift to our town in the work that came to be. So with this, I would like to introduce Mandy Sliver, who's going to start the ball rolling with the presentation.
Thank you, Tyler. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Excellent. So, as Tyler said, my name is Mandy Sliver. I'm the chairperson for the building committee for this project. And before we get to the nuts and bolts of this presentation, I've been asked to take a couple of minutes to just explain the role of the building committee in this project. And I also want to take a minute to address the question that I've been hearing a lot lately, and many of you might still be thinking, is now the right time? I agree we need a new fire station, but it's so much money. Can't we just wait a few years? So first, I want to explain how I got involved in this project and what my experience has been like. My husband and I bought our house in Peterborough only days after our wedding 22 years ago. We're still in the same house and we still love it here. But about 10 years ago, after several years of frustration with my increasing property tax bill, I felt I should better understand where my money was going. My education and work experiences include accounting, finance, business ownership, government auditing, so I should understand this stuff, but I didn't know where to start. So a friend introduced me to the budget committee as a way to better understand how my taxes are being spent and to get an opportunity to ask questions and learn. In Peterborough, the budget committee is an advisory committee only, so they do not actually create the budget, but they're tasked with understanding the impact on the tax rate. So 9 years ago, I ran for the budget committee and won a seat. I've run twice more since then because I'm still learning new things every year, but I've gained a very good understanding of how dedicated our town employees are and how they're constantly trying to offer the quality services we demand, but keep the costs as low as possible. It was in this seat on the budget committee that I was presented with the municipal campus project costs and proposed bond amount 2 years ago. As a longtime supporter of the services provided by Peterborough Fire and Rescue, or PFR, I was excited to see this project moving forward. And then the presentation included a dollar figure that made me wonder if I was hearing things. And to my untrained eye, the building design did not seem very sophisticated. I didn't know anything about construction projects, but I felt something was off, and there was just no way I could recommend a yes vote. The budget committee and the select board jointly refused to take a vote that night until we could have time to review, ask more questions, and research the process. Within a couple of weeks, through a series of collaborative meetings that included town officials and a wider group of experts, a new plan was created. And a warrant article for $2 million was presented to the budget committee and select board for the design and pre-construction phase using Elm Street site as a project location. We all heard the new plans, asked questions, and then voted to recommend the article to town meeting, where nearly 80% of us, voters of Peterborough, agreed that this was a solid plan. That was a powerful night for me, because I learned that night that I live in a community that pays attention to what's going on, listens to each other, prioritizes the safety of the entire community, and supports the importance of doing things the right way. So I was hopeful for this plan, but I will be honest, I was still uncertain how it was going to get done with so few people involved. Our Fire Chief Ed Walker and Assistant Town Administrator Seth McLean would be heading up the project. And while they both have extensive experience, they already have full-time jobs, and neither one of them has actually built a fire station from the ground up. So in my opinion, to keep this project moving, they should have some help. We're a community, and we have incredible resources available right here within our own residence. So I immediately started advocating to anyone who would listen for a committee of experts, hopefully Peterborough residents if we could find them, who are willing to assist with researching, interviewing, and choosing the design firm and construction manager. I didn't need to be on the committee, but I thought that there needed to be one. Other people had the same idea as me, and many agreed that it was needed. So after several months of me asking, so who's on your committee? How's the committee going? The committee finally began to take shape. Obviously, they asked me to participate. You can see the other members of the committee in the handout that you all received, and you can read about their areas of expertise. This is an incredible group of people, and I'm so grateful to be given the chance to work with them. Seth will explain in a few minutes some of the work we did, but I will say that we challenged the architects and engineers at every turn to make sure that we're presenting a building plan that has no more corners to cut, but can still function for the needs of the current and future PFR. The design that's been estimated for the plan you're seeing tonight has been discussed and debated for dozens of hours by hundreds of people with different perspectives and levels of expertise. I knew we were doing a thorough job in our deliberations when people from the community, many of you here tonight, would come to the public meetings and ask a question that we had already asked and researched. That meant we were covering all the bases pretty well. So I will never consider anything to be a stupid question because the chances are pretty good that at one point I actually asked it myself. Before I turn it over to the rest of the team, I just want to quickly share a few of the things that I personally experienced during the last year that helped me answer the question, is this the right time or can we wait? In addition to the construction research and fire station visits, I dove into the history of PFR and I started visiting the station and talking to the first responders who work there to gain a better understanding of what we need to be sure that we're making this building right-sized for our community. The most important thing that I learned by talking with many of the members of PFR is that they all have a strong sense of duty and pride in our community. And they are really stubborn. So when I started getting to know them one by one, I would ask, why do you think we need a new building? And not a single person complained about comfort or convenience. They're concerned about response times when they have to move vehicles to get the right truck out the door. They're concerned about the long-term health of their fellow members without a proper decontamination space. They're concerned about the roof falling in because they've watched it leak and slowly bow over the years. And if that roof fails, their first concern was for the safety of anyone in the building, and their second concern was for the town's budget. because there's so much expensive specialized equipment, not just trucks, that it's piled under this roof, and they won't be able to respond to calls if that equipment gets ruined. These are just a few of the big reasons I can confidently say that we don't have any more time to wait for this building. So if it's this bad, why aren't the members of PFR picketing the poor working conditions, refusing to show up? Remember that stubbornness that I mentioned? That sense of duty, the pride in their community, in our community? Just because they have and they will continue to work in these conditions as long as they're needed, that doesn't make it right. They show up every day to do their job, which is to respond to the call when someone is in need. So now it's up to every one of us to do our job, which is to provide them with the tools to do theirs. Seth?
Thank you, Mandy, and thank you everybody for showing up tonight. This building committee has put so much passion into this. You heard that right there, and that's the kind of passion they brought to this entire process for the last 2 years. So, one comment real quick to John. Hey, I bleed green too. I'm a big Celtics fan. I don't want to know the score. I have enough anxiety standing up here, so let's just keep that to ourselves. I'm gonna go home and watch that on DVR. But I appreciate your passion for that. So, I don't normally read. I usually go off the cuff, a lot of you know me, but I think this is a really, really important consideration, and a lot of people put a lot of work into this. So I hope you don't mind me stuttering through my speech tonight, because I'm much better at just speaking as opposed to reading. But I need to read because I need to do justice to all the work that has been done, regardless of the outcome tonight. So I'm going to read, and I'll do my best. So allow me to extend a warm welcome to all present here tonight and express my sincere gratitude to each of you for taking the time to join us in this important deliberation. Your presence underscores the significance of the matter at hand and reflects our collective commitment to the welfare of our community, a commitment that lies at the heart of our town's identity. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Seth McLean. I serve as the Director of Public Works for Peterborough, and some of my duties include planning and executing many of the town's capital projects. And I'm proud to be here tonight to present this project, which represents 25 years off and on of planning for a new fire and ambulance facility. I'm going to apologize in advance first. I've done my best to synthesize 2 years of work into a few minutes of talking points, but as you can imagine, that's a difficult task, given how much time has been invested in tonight's important consideration. So I appreciate your patience. I know many of you are eager to begin dialogue. Some would probably like to jump right to the vote, but for the sake of those who are new to our town, new to this project, or this process that's been underway over the last couple of years, I think it's important to deliver an overview of how we got here tonight. So before getting into details, I want to take a quick moment to offer thanks to those who generously devote their time and expertise to the betterment of our community. Volunteerism serves as the bedrock of local governance, and without the dedicated efforts of individuals like yourself, Peterborough would not be the vibrant town that it is today. Your contributions are truly invaluable, and I am personally deeply grateful for your ongoing support. Throughout the course of this project, I've often emphasized the importance of recognizing the contributions of those who have been involved in the development over the past 2 decades of this project. Special thanks are due to the Building Committee, the Budget Committee, the Capital Committee, and the Municipal Campus Task Force for their tireless efforts of advancing the fire station project and guiding us to this pivotal stage. However, I would also like to extend additional gratitude to the voters of Peterborough for their trust in our elected and appointed officials and their steadfast support of the various initiatives aimed at strengthening our community. Your authorization of crucial financial decisions over the past 5 years has enabled us to establish a solid financial foundation for our town's future. From the establishment of capital reserve funds to the implementation of infrastructure projects such as roadway upgrades, bridge enhancements, a new wastewater facility a few years ago now, and the nearly complete Cold Springs project, and many, many more. Your foresight and commitment to responsible stewardship has been instrumental in shaping our community's growth and prosperity. You've protected our environment, preserved our buildings, and conserved and secured access to clean water for generations to come. Furthermore, your investment in initiatives such as the construction of a new library, the Main Street Bridge project, and the development and implementation of sustainable energy solutions underscores your dedication to enhancing the quality of life in Peterborough. Your support for these endeavors reflects a shared vision of progress and sustainability, and I'm proud to live in Peterborough and work for a community that prioritizes investment in its future. Your Capital Committee, Budget Committee, Energy Committee, Select Board, and administration have worked diligently over the past decades, and most specifically the past 10 years or so, to put this community on a solid, predictable financial path. Their work is commendable, at times very difficult, but it's paved the way for tonight's important conversation. So as we gather tonight to consider likely the biggest undertaking this town has ever considered if this is passed, I'm thankful so much work has been done to allow for this project to be responsibly presented here this evening. Though much great work has been done to save for critical infrastructure instead of borrowing, and major infrastructure projects are now complete or nearing completion, there is one left to consider which will require the community to borrow, and that's tonight's proposal. As we embark on tonight's agenda, I want to express my gratitude for your patience and understanding. I believe it's very essential that we briefly reflect on the journey that commenced 2 years ago at town meeting. Before I do that, I would like to ask you, if you wouldn't mind, to join me in thanking all of our volunteers, Building Committee, Budget Committee, Capital Committee, and especially PFR. Thank you. It takes thousands of hours of dedicated volunteers to put a community like this together and keep this place running, and we're deeply indebted to everybody. All right, back to the program. So at that juncture 2 years ago, the Select Board and Town Administrator, spurred by concerns over the initial municipal campus concept, entrusted me with spearheading this project, one that received resounding support from our voters 2 years ago at town meeting, but that simultaneously concerned probably all of us, including your staff. Our community, alongside elected committees and the Select Board, conveyed a clear message at that time. They sought a project that strikes an appropriate but difficult balance between financial viability and the operational imperatives of Peterborough Fire and Rescue. Additionally, they emphasized the importance of a truly inclusive public design process as we progress through the planning phases of this. Reflecting on past experiences and engaging with various stakeholders, including many community members, staff, the Select Board, the Budget Committee, the Capital Committee, and many others, helped to clarify the goals of this planning endeavor. And those goals have been and are: 1, facilitating a fully transparent public process that actively encourages community involvement in the design phase. 2, developing a project that balances financial viability with the operational needs of Peterborough Fire and Rescue. 3, ensuring alignment with the community's energy and sustainability goals for both 2030 and 2050. 4, enhancing the Elm Street site through strategic measures such as stormwater management, optimized traffic flow, and the segregation of heavy equipment from public access areas. And 5, and probably most importantly in my opinion, prioritizing the health and safety needs of our firefighters, first responders, and paramedics through the design and construction of a facility tailored to their specific requirements. This is especially important given that firefighters and first responders, if you didn't know, face a 9% greater risk than the general public of contracting forms of cancer and an 18% greater risk of dying from those diseases. The safety of those that serve us in our times of need is critical and not being adequately addressed at this time. To meet all these goals, we had an awful lot to learn, as Mandy suggested. So to begin our discovery process, tours were organized with meticulous attention, involving Selectman Taylor, who went on every tour with me and drove me, actually, which saved you some mileage as taxpayers because I didn't get reimbursed. Chief Walker was there, other members of PFR, many members of the Budget Committee joined. Given the absence of a similar structure in our community, embarking on these tours was imperative to familiarize ourselves with the essential considerations for advancing this project. Engaging with numerous communities, we toured their facilities, engaged in discussions, and gleaned insights into various design aspects, project delivery methods, and essential do's and don'ts as we move this forward. We were particularly intrigued to discover how other communities might approach the projects differently if given the chance to start anew, armed with such hindsight. In total, this group visited 8 communities. I think the Budget Committee actually visited 2 more without us. So 10 in total for the whole group, but 8 communities with departments ranging in size and scope. These tours underscored the uniqueness of each station and process, emphasizing the necessity of tailoring our approach to the specific needs of our community. While certain consistencies in design and process emerged, we diligently absorbed these lessons and adapted our process accordingly. So let's go back to that 23 number again. The unveiling of the $23 million price tag, dubbed the bomb, as Mr. Kennedy likes to call it sometimes, undoubtedly left a lasting impression on all present. The collective reaction mirrored the shock and concern felt by the staff. It became clear that adjustments were imperative, prompting commitments made during town meeting 2022 to embark on a complete restart of our conceptual process. So to that aim, special meetings convened in July and October of that same year with the Capital Committee, Budget Committee, Select Board, staff, and members of the public to deliberate on and establish a project cap. It was determined that a prudent threshold for this endeavor would be 70% or less of our total bonding capacity, and at that time that equated to approximately $12.1 million. This pivotal decision provided the Building Committee and the yet-to-be-determined professional services team with a clear target, guiding design deliberations to align with the financial expectations of our community's elected representatives. Recognizing the inherent value of such expansive projects, the selection of an appropriate professional services team became paramount, necessitating innovative thinking to deliver a facility that meets the rigorous demands of our emergency services within the constraints of our prescribed budget. Project delivery method selection was a critical aspect of our planning process as well. During our extensive tours, we sought to determine the most suitable approach for our circumstance. While conventional private building projects often opt for what's called a design-build method, we recognize its inherent financial inefficiency within the context of a town meeting style of government, where the need for precision in raising and appropriating funds on evenings such as this is paramount. Similarly, while the design-bid-build is a commonly utilized form for projects heavy on civil engineering, its applicability to vertical constructions like a fire station was limited, especially given the challenges posed by the pandemic-induced volatility in pricing within the construction industry. So after careful consideration, we opted for the construction management approach with a heavy emphasis on pre-construction services. And this decision was driven by three primary factors. First, it facilitates constant estimating throughout the design process, ensuring that the project remains on budget. Secondly, it instills confidence that the project value presented for consideration is accurate. And third, it puts practical construction knowledge at the table throughout the entire planning process to ensure we've left no stone unturned. Following this determination, I provided the Select Board with the initial project update and received authorization to form a team comprising of community members and staff to initiate the selection process for a qualified construction management firm. After an exhaustive 2-month deliberation period, during which we meticulously crafted requests for qualifications and proposals, Harvey Construction was chosen to shepherd this project. The decision to engage a firm with practical construction knowledge was deemed crucial, and Harvey Construction proved an excellent fit for our community, especially given their successful completion of our newly constructed public library. Tonight, we're fortunate to have Keith Kelly, a representative from Harvey Construction, who was our pre-construction manager with us, whose contributions have been absolutely invaluable in achieving our project goals and adhering to our budget requirements. Keith is a construction manager. He's also a licensed architect with applicable design experience. Subsequently, we shifted our focus to selecting an architect for this project. Following the issuance of a request for proposal, we received responses from 10 firms. After careful evaluation, that list was narrowed down to 5 finalists, and an extensive interview process ensued. Ultimately, SMP Architecture was selected to lead the design efforts for 2 compelling reasons. First, their extensive track record, which demonstrates their capability to see the project through, and their vision for involving the community in the design process. SMP Architecture's commitment to engaging stakeholders and their understanding of the public process instilled confidence in our team that they could effectively lead design efforts in collaboration with the community, Peterborough Fire and Rescue, and the Building Committee. In a few moments, you're going to hear from Jason Lacombe, who's the principal with SMP and the leader on this project, who will elaborate how their firm, working in tandem with the public, PFR, the Building Committee, successfully met our goals, providing the Budget Committee, Building Committee, Select Board, and staff with the assurance to advance the project for consideration tonight. We're here tonight because each of those voting bodies considered the project in detail and determined the project should advance to your consideration. As our team coalesced, the need to establish a formal Building Committee became apparent. This committee would collaborate with staff and the professional services team to delineate the emerging public process and assist in critical design making regarding the station's design in the broader Elm Street parcel. Fortunately, those who participated in the selection of our construction management firm and architect agreed to continue their involvement for a period of 3 years and were appointed by the Select Board. This commitment allows ample time for the development of conceptual designs, hosting public input sessions, and should the project advance tonight, overseeing community involvement in the decision-making throughout the next phases of the project. The members of this committee include Mandy Sliver, who you've already heard from tonight, who's the chair of the building committee and town treasurer, Carl Mabzino, who's on our budget committee and capital committee, Bill Taylor, who I already mentioned, who's on representing the select board as liaison to the project, Carol Nelson, who serves on the affordable housing committee, Sarah Steinberg-Heller, who's representing the planning board, Tony Cassidy from the community power committee. Direct. Tough group, let me tell you. Direct staff support for the committee was provided by Fire Chief Ed Walker, Deputy Fire Chiefs Brad Winters, and Chief of EMS John Fahey, our DPW Business Manager Gretchen Ray, Finance Director Lily Gilligan, Planning Director Danica Malone, Town Administrator Note Cole McStay, IT Director Fosh Farashahi, and myself as Project Manager. And of course, the public as well. Our collaboration with the professional service team commenced with regular meetings to discuss fire rescues program, our community's goals, including sustainability and budget considerations, and critically, the development and implementation of a comprehensive community input strategy. This strategy aimed to ensure that every member of our community had the opportunity to contribute their ideas and voice their concerns as the design process unfolded. We conducted 3 well-attended public input sessions at the 1833 room of the library, and I want to extend my gratitude to all the community members who participated and shared their insights. Your engagement was instrumental in shaping a project that reflects the collective will of our community, and without your support, we wouldn't have progressed this far. Additionally, we launched the project website to provide the public with information about this project, facilitate direct communication with the project team, access plans, drawings, and meeting materials. This platform also allowed those unable to attend the public sessions to view presentations and those community discussions. I again extend my appreciation to all the community members who utilized this tool and provided their valuable feedback. Many members of our community also reached out to myself, members of our fire staff, members of the building committee directly, engaging in construction conversations, and for all your involvement, thank you. Recognizing the numerous challenges posed by the site, particularly regarding vehicular and pedestrian access, as well as the absence of stormwater management, we engaged a civil engineering firm to collaborate with SMP and Harvey in addressing these issues. Hoyle and Tanner, known in this community for their exceptional work on projects such as the Main Street Bridge, Union Street Reconstruction, Union Street Bridge, and many, many others, were selected for their expertise. Marisa DiBiaso is present tonight, and she can provide insight into the developed site plan if needed. I've worked with Marisa a lot. She's an outstanding civil engineer. Through her diligent efforts, should this project proceed, the site will offer enhanced pedestrian safety, responsible stormwater management, and the proper separation of heavy equipment and fire apparatus from the public works and the community center. This plan also preserves access to the public works and community center facility and enhances parking, beneficial for large community events like voting. We've all been there when there's snow falling, there's an election happening, and there's DPW trucks rolling in and out. This project will remedy that. Marisa definitely integrated these goals into a challenging site while again adhering to our budget. As you all know, Peterborough prides itself on its commitment to energy and sustainability leadership, evident in our goals for renewable energy reliance by 2030 and for our all energy needs by 2050, and the many projects this community has completed aimed at sustainability. To align with these objectives, it was crucial to collaborate with an architectural firm that shared these values. SMP demonstrated this commitment and further bolstered it by including a company called Resilient Buildings Group, who are a specialty sub-consultant dedicated to energy and sustainability planning. They added them as part of their team. In August of 2023, the professional services team and the building committee engaged with our town's energy groups to develop a plan aligning with these goals. The community's active participation ensured that the project as presented tonight not only meets the 2030 goals, but also the 2050 goals and stays within our target budget. Throughout this process, we recognize the necessity of maximizing the efficiency of our design efforts to align with our financial objectives while meeting the high standards of service expected by our community for emergency response. Numerous decisions were guided by the aim of keeping the project within budget. However, as expected, initial estimates revealed that we were exceeding our budget. In response, the building committee, in collaboration with the design team and Harvey, conducted 2 value engineering exercises this past fall. The objective was quite ambitious: to reduce the project cost by about $1.6 million while preserving the essential elements required for a modern and fully functional fire and ambulance station. This demonstrates the unwavering dedication of the building committee and their collaborative team to uphold the predetermined goals of this project. Following this important exercise, the building committee unanimously voted to move this project forward to consideration through the town's annual budget process. This is very important as it was the first step in moving the project onto larger consideration, but equally, if not more important, in that the building committee from day one was empowered to determine the timing of this project and whether it would require additional time before moving to wider consideration. Throughout the 2-year planning process, monthly updates were provided to the select board, bi-weekly meetings were held on average with the building committee and the professional service providers. The select board throughout continued to emphasize the need for goal adherence and budget compliance. I'm proud to announce that we've met these expectations, achieving financial viability without compromising critical components of the fire station, maintaining transparency with heavily emphasizing community engagement, enhancing the Elm Street site's functionality, and prioritizing the health and safety of our emergency responders. Through difficult deliberations with the team, the proposal you are considering tonight has reduced the initial $23 million project nearly in half, without sacrificing enhancements needed on Elm Street, the operational efficiency of our fire and rescue service, or disregarding the community's commitment to renewable energy and sustainability. This project you are considering tonight will provide proper decontamination to help enhance the health and safety of your first responders, and enhanced operational efficiency to allow for improved response times when people are in need of emergency services. It will bring needed stormwater mitigation to the Elm Street site, where none exists today, and has been designed with a rainwater capture system to help preserve the town's potable water supply. It improves parking and access for the community center and safely separates DPW heavy equipment from the community center. It's been designed to incorporate sustainable energy considerations as well as prep for future considerations as they and funding become available. It gives our staff adequate office space and living quarters that don't exist today. It houses all of the fire department's fleet, where today many pieces are constantly exposed to harsh weather or inefficiently stored indoors, making it difficult to quickly respond during a critical emergency. Unlike our current facility, this new facility will be mold-free and with a roof that sheds water, unlike our current facility which leaks and whose living quarters are not suitable for those that staff the building 24 hours a day and need to rest. The new facility, unlike the present, will contain an emergency operations center where none exists today, and will get our critical emergency services building out of the floodplain. The project also brings a new sidewalk connection to the Shaw's Plaza, giving pedestrians a safer alternative than walking along Route 101. This is important as this community has long requested safer access to that plaza. There are many other benefits to this project that have been realized, which Jason will speak to in a few moments. But in the meantime, each of you were given a pamphlet developed by the building committee, which highlights many of the key design considerations that you might find interesting. If you didn't get one, if you raise your hand, a member of the staff will happily give you one. There's plenty in the back of the room still. Someone will come help you. After 2 years of meticulous planning, extensive community involvement, and the dedicated efforts of the team, the project was presented to the Capital Committee, the Budget Committee, the Select Board this past fall and winter through the annual budget process. The Budget Committee, the Building Committee, and the Select Board each authorized this project to move forward tonight. In a few moments, as I mentioned, Jason will elaborate on how SMP addressed our goals and our challenging objectives through their design work, followed by Keith Kelly from Harvey Construction discussing the estimating process that was used and pre-construction management services. Town Administrator Nicole McStable will then discuss town finances and bond considerations, including the burning question probably most of you have this evening. So how much is this really going to cost for me? Next up, it's going to be Chief Walker, who will provide insights into the current facility and the operations to provide context for the scope of the proposed project. When our brief presentations are complete, the floor will be open to public comment, and then we'll vote on this project. If you're not comfortable getting on the microphone, but you do have questions, keeping consistent with our process so far, once the polls are open, I and others from the project team will be hanging out right over here. You're welcome to come talk to us one-on-one and ask your questions if you're not comfortable doing it on the microphone. Once again, thank you for your support of local government and community engagement tonight. And with that, if you could please welcome Chief Ed Walker.
Thank you, Seth.
Look at that, it worked. All right, thank you all tonight. Appreciate everybody coming out and really the overall involvement with the community in this. So a little over 10 years ago, I started here in Peterborough, and as I was going through the interview process, Pam Brenner, who we can now talk about because there's been another town administrator between her and Nicole, mentioned that the fire station was probably one of the most important projects, but like a lot of other things, there have been existential crises that have come up and things that have sort of postponed it and gotten in the way of it. But I think we're sort of at the point now where we can move this forward. In the town meeting handout, hopefully folks had a chance to grab one on the table that was in the hallway. There are a couple pages dedicated to sort of our program and what we do and how we'll do. And I want to highlight a few of those things for you folks in there. One of the things I know is going to come up, and Jason's going to address it in a lot of depth, is the size of the facility. The current building we're in was built in 1945 as the DPW garage for the town of Peterborough. In 1972, they built the building the DPW is in now on Elm Street. That was really the last public building project the town of Peterborough has undertaken. When they built that building, the fire department moved into the facility that was at that time about 30 years old, from their location up here on Main Street. What looks like a fire station with the apartments was the fire station, the only other fire station the town of Peterborough has ever built. In 2004, really started this whole process. That's the 20 years ago that we talk about. The town engaged Weller and Michael Architects to go through and do really an analysis of all the buildings, to look at the library, the fire station, the recreation department, the police department, the DPW, to make recommendations for facilities. At that time, they recommended the new fire station be about 15,863 square feet. That was a net square foot area. That didn't include walls and circulation and the rest of it. That also was before we had full-time EMS personnel and the station staffed at all to the level that it is now. We went on from that. That was a big undertaking. A lot of things came up. Master plan came and evaluated stuff. So we looked at Evans Street, Evans Flats as an area to embrace a lot of these municipal facilities and get them in one place together. Fast forward to 2017, when the town engaged with Warren Street Architects to sort of revisit this project and take a look at where we are. And Warren Street's first task was to examine what had been done in the past, in this case by Weller and Michael, and evaluate sort of where we were now in our needs. The facility they came up with was around 18,000, call it 19,000 square feet, but again, a preliminary number that did not include a lot of your circulation space and the rest of it. A few other things came along then. We had a little pandemic that got into us. We were involved in the construction of the library. So fast forward to 2022. Others have already mentioned it, so I can talk about the $23 million project that we had in front of us. That building was 31,919 square feet. A lot different than what we had. So as you folks know, we all had a lot of angst and concern about that. So as we move forward, we really spent a lot of time looking at not only what is our, as we call it, program, what do we do, what services do we provide you as residents and provide those other communities that contract with us for the ambulance, and what is the space that we need to do that, not only now, but also in the future. Realizing that, although the last building has way outlived its useful life, we need to count on 50 to 75 years for this building before our children or grandchildren are up here trying to make these same decisions. So that's really where we are. And we worked through SMP, and again, Jason's going to get into all of this, to really narrow it down to a facility that meets our needs and meets our program. A few of the things that I want to highlight, though, beyond what's sort of in your folder, in 2011, through our GIS department, when there was really a lot of focus on different locations, some of you may remember, there was a site over on 202, there were actually a couple of sites over on 202, there was the Elm Street location, there was the existing station. They did a lot of studies on our response time. And one of the things that they found was the response time from the Evans location pretty much mirrors the response time from our current Summer Street location in terms of sort of the geography of Peterborough and where folks in Peterborough and the concentration of the population is. And that really has stayed the same, as most of our building is concentrated in the same areas. One other thing that has come up is a lot of discussion about the ability of the fire apparatus to get from Elm Street onto Route 101. Because 101 will be sort of our major artery coming down either 202 north or south or continuing east on Wilton Road. We quite frequently use Elm Street now for all of our calls over to that area of town that go off of 101 up into Dublin or those areas. We come out to Elm Street. We're confident that we can manage that intersection well. We have great sight lines both towards the rotary or roundabout at Shaw's, as well as to the east down towards the vehicles cresting the hill there. in looking at that. Doesn't mean a traffic study is out of the question as we go forward, but in thinking this through, that was one of our considerations and one of the things we're looking at. Talking about the storage of vehicles, you know, I really can't impress enough upon you the two things with keeping vehicles outside. One of them is just the wear and tear on sitting outside in the cold, in the heat, in the snow, in the sun. But the second piece of that too is the availability of that equipment. Particularly we look at our ambulances that are out there. Our ambulance fleet is getting a little bit older, and like the rest of us are getting older, it doesn't always work the way you want it to when you want it to. Well, now, to put an ambulance in service, you've got to bring it inside, either cool it off or warm it up, put equipment on it like medications and the rest of that. A new facility won't necessarily require that. We also have a couple of trailers that we use for equipment that responds to scenes. In the wintertime, we have to take time to either potentially shovel those trailers out and definitely clean the snow off of them, so that we don't have to run the risk of the snow flying off as we're responding down the roads in looking at that. One of the things Seth mentioned was Emergency Operations Center and sort of meeting those disaster needs. A lot of folks aren't really familiar with what an Emergency Operations Center is, but an Emergency Operations Center provides a location where key individuals, fire, police, DPW, town administration, in our case maybe schools or hospitals, can come together and sort of help plan and organize response to events. Sort of the most recent time where this really would have been valuable for us was we had a couple of snowstorms back in April. One of them resulted in a lot of trees down, a lot of roads closed. Very hard with the police, fire, and DPW all operating on different radio frequencies, all operating with different dispatch centers to sort of manage that communication, figure out what's open, what's closed, and have someone dedicated to providing timely information to the community. So that's really one recent example of that benefit. And then sort of the last bullet point up here is really the health risks to us. Seth already mentioned the numbers on the cancer rate for firefighters, the 4% and the 18% that we had in there. But the other thing, anybody who's been to our station, our building was built as a DPW. It wasn't really built for 24-hour-a-day occupancy. Employees come in, they get in their vehicle, they leave, they do their work in the field, they come back, they park their vehicles. Where we have our office space, where we have our living space, where we store our firefighting gear, is in or adjacent to that apparatus floor. Our folks are constantly exposed to those diesel fumes. The present station has a diesel filtration system, which really is just giant fans that come on, attempt to filter the air and recirculate that in that space. But although that's running, there still is a lot of contamination there. Our gear is getting covered with that. It leaks into our sleeping areas, it leaks into our offices, it leaks into our kitchen areas. So we're dealing with that and looking at that. Another consideration, I'm sure a lot of you have seen in the news recently, PFAS, referred to as the forever chemicals. Firefighting gear is one of those things that traditionally has always had the PFASs in it. One of the things that's unique about PFASs is when they're in the clothing, they're constantly off-gassing. So your newer fire stations are set up with, although we are working in the fire service towards eliminating the PFASs, that's quite a ways away, are working towards separate storage areas which provide for what we call really a red zone, or a zone that you don't spend time in unless you have to spend time in. So that, again, helps protect us from those things that are off-gassing and looking at that. One other thing that is, again, not being designed for 24/7 occupancy, we don't have any ventilation in our building. Most of our, that was me. Is that you or me? We don't have ventilation in our building. So when you look at our sleeping rooms, and you look at our office space, you look at our kitchen and the rest of it, we don't have windows to open. We don't have the ability to bring fresh air in. A modern building would have an air handling system that would balance your fresh air with your existing air, both for the sake of energy efficiency as well for the comfort and safety of the occupants that are in there. A few other little things that are in there, such as our gear washers, which take the carcinogen contaminants. Now, that's not filtered prior to going into stormwater systems, nor is our washing of vehicles. So as we move forward with our new building, particularly on the site with the environmental impact that that site has with the wetlands around it, one of the other considerations is making sure that's there. So from our perspective as the folks that are utilizing that building, working in that building 24/7 to serve you folks, those are really the things that get into the programmatic needs and the programmatic studies for that. So I think at this point, it's really time to bring Jason up here to walk you through how we got to the building that hopefully you folks are going to say yes to tonight. Jason.
Thank you, Chief.
This is exciting. This is months in the making. I had a few people suggest that I come up here and take somewhat of a victory lap. And while I hope to do that a little bit, the reality is it's not a victory until we've really achieved the goals of the community, and really that's up to you tonight. So what I'd like to do is show you a little bit of the process that we went through and go into a little more detail on what Seth and the chief had built up, and hopefully I can live up to the expectations that they planted. So, if I can work with technology. So, we first got the call June or July of last year that an RFP was going to come out and that we should take it seriously. So we did, and in August we were obviously selected. But we realized the challenges when we arrived at the interview, and I think I might have somewhat lectured the group, so I'm surprised they still chose us, in the challenges that we were going to face getting this project done. We were on a truncated timeline. It seems like you have a lot of time, but the reality is we only had about 5 months to gain input, to engage the public, and to solve some really hard problems. We recognized at the interview that there was what we call a misalignment of the scope of the project and the budget. Everyone's mentioned the $23 million budget. I was not intending to, but they opened the door, so here we go. We knew that there were some challenges. There was a lot of space concerns and a lot of financial concerns, and we were given a very clear cap that this project would be within, period. This community has very advanced energy and sustainability goals. 80% of my work is municipal work. I spend a lot of evenings talking with folks such as yourself. Every community has sustainability goals. I would say Peterborough is one of the more advanced and progressive, and I compliment you on that. I hope we lived up to the challenge. And then you have a challenging site. A challenging site for many reasons, which we'll get into. One of the things that is worth noting is everyone looks for the perfect flat site. Well, there is such a thing as a site that is too flat, and you have one. So thank you, Marisa, for really challenging that. So back at the interview, we laid out planning and design. These 4 columns. We have to come up with some design approaches. We have to gain consensus. Think of design as the funnel approach. At the top of the funnel, every idea is a good idea. At the bottom of the funnel is the right solution. We worked with the department, we worked with the building committee, and yourself, who attended all the groups, to come up with those approaches to make sense. For each concept, we did energy modeling. Seth mentioned Resilient Buildings Group. They're a valued partner of ours. We've been working with them for many, many years, and they brought a lot of valuable input of how would this building perform if we made these decisions, back when we were still fat markers on trace paper. So very valuable. And then the functional assessment. This is a really big piece because we were handed a building program that clearly exceeded the budget, and then obviously the budget impact. So this was all a conversation we had at our interview. We then laid out a path forward. It's rare for me to stand in front of a group at an interview and lay out a path forward and lay out a schedule and actually have the client live up to it. You did. The building committee did, and I commend you for that. One of the reasons we're standing here is because there was such a commitment on part of everyone that we worked with to meet the deadlines, to spend the time, to ask the hard questions, and frankly expect really good answers. And I think we got that. So, let's start with the program versus the budget. I think before we were hired, Keith and I had a heart-to-heart about what's reasonable, given the budget cap that we were given. What's a target that we really need to look at? We hadn't even dug into the detail of the program that we were handed. This is merely a high-level conversation. We knew that 31,000, almost 32,000 square feet was not going to fit within your budget. We came up with a target of 22,000 square feet. That means we had to cut 30% of your program out of the building, but still make sure that it served the community and met the function. This is an emergency services facility, so building 90% of a facility is really not money well spent. So it has to function. That's rule number one. 22,000 square feet was our target. We then took the program and we drew every space that somebody else said you needed, and then we questioned everything, and we said, do you really need that? How can we do it more efficient? Who can share desks? Does that room really need to be that big? How much apparatus do you really have that needs to be inside? How much clearance needs to be around that apparatus to properly service it, to load it, to unload it, make sure doors don't bump when they open each other, right? That's all part of the functional piece. We went back and forth with the department on this over 3 or so meetings, really asking hard questions to make sure we were assessing your program properly. We then had what's dubbed as the sustainability charrette. You can debate the term, but this is the term that Resilient Buildings Group uses. It's really a goal-setting session where we worked with several of the members of the Energy Committee and Building Committee and public at large. I think there were about 30 or 35 people there, where we talked through what are your real sustainability goals for this project? What's important to you? On a scale of 1 to 10, everything was a 10, except a couple of things that were 11s. So it was a great meeting. It was a great discussion. We came out basically where we thought we would. Okay. Site challenge. Let's get to the hard part, right? We were given a site that has public functions and commercial functions. We have a community center right there that is very active and vibrant, that has farmers markets, that has boating, that has activities there, mixed with public works vehicles coming and going. I happened to be on site last voting session, so I witnessed the chaos, for lack of a better term, and I think it was snowing that day as well, so it was eye-opening. We have a site that has proximity to wetlands, very valued wetlands around town. We have traffic and parking concerns of how are we going to have emergency apparatus exit out onto Elm Street and keep everybody safe, and keep people who are accessing the community center safe at the same time. This is an emergency services facility. People have to be able to get in and out of the apparatus base safely, yet you still want to have a viable community center. And then, as I mentioned, the site is really flat. So we started looking at where could you put a building. There's several options, but this was identified as the sort of key piece. The yellow circles represent those apparatus bay pads. So in front of the doors, we've got the apron. That's where the heavy equipment's going to be coming out of. We then identified areas for parking and a circulation path. One of the keys here was to look at the site where you had a public side of the site and you had a service side of the site. So we identified a location for the laser pointers where that could be a service access. So we were trying to separate vehicular access for public works and the fire station away from the community center. We then identified some green space. Green space is always important, particularly around the community center. And you have lovely gardens in the back. Then after many iterations, you can see this is number 4, we landed on a preferred solution, which then created that separation. I think I killed the battery, Nicole. Created that separation of community side where the public could function, access all the buildings, and have that without impeding or needing to cross the commercial side of the access. All right. And then after a few more iterations, I'm going to put that down. After a few more iterations, Marisa and her team at Hoyle Tanner took over and actually drew an engineered site plan, which is really great, and made it all work, frankly, with some improvements. So we've addressed parking, we've addressed circulation in the site plan. I'm lingering only because Marisa said not to. And then we got to a floor plan. Come on, we might as well have a little bit of fun with this. So let's walk through the floor plan. As I said, emergency services, there are really 3 core components that we look at when we do facilities like this. One is a public component, one is the staff function. People work here in an office type environment. And then there's the emergency service of cars are coming in quick, they're on a call, they need to get on a piece of apparatus. So that starts to create these three separate entries. So at the top of the page is that public entry, that's off the parking area. This is where you would come to a public meeting or have a meeting with the fire department or pull a building permit or a burn permit or whatever the public needs to do at the facility. At the rear side of the entry is the staff. So this is where staff coming and going to work would enter in. And then on the bottom, off of that access drive, is the emergency services. So this is where when you're arriving on a call, you're entering into the building, you're near the gear area so you can get in, get your gear, and get on the truck before it moves out. Then we have those yellow circles on the side. Those are those apparatus bay aprons. One thing I didn't point out in the site plan is through all the iterations, we were able to develop a plan that saved the motor pool building. It's a cold storage building, it's existing, you own it, it's very heavily used, and we're actually relying on some space for some of those trailers for the fire department. So off that public entry, we have what we've determined is the public space. So this is the emergency operation and training room, but we've laid it out in a way where it could also serve for public meetings. Meetings of 75 to 100 would certainly be possible. The town also has a museum of historic apparatus and memorabilia that we're looking to relocate into a small area on the corner. Be able to not only show that, but make it accessible, keep it protected, and more in the public eye. So along the top side is the administration wing. So this is all the working offices. This is the functional part where the office and meeting rooms would be. And then on the other side, this is 24/7 facility. So we are designing for residential components. So this is bunk rooms. This is a day room, dining, kitchen facilities. So the officers or staff would be here staffed on a 24-hour period. So they're effectively living in this space, and we want it comfortable, but not too comfortable. So there's a delicate balance there, because it is a work environment, but recognize that when firefighters are coming back from a call at 2 in the morning, they may need some decompression time. In the center, that leaves what we call the core space. There's a limited number of rooms that don't need windows, stuff like bathrooms and server rooms and storage rooms and copy rooms. So all those are located in the center piece. And then we have the apparatus space. When we went through the programming effort, we really drilled into the apparatus. What does the department have? What might they have in the future? What needs to be in conditioned space? What just needs to be under a roof? And after all of that, we arrived at an apparatus layout that provides the access and puts all of the necessary equipment in conditioned space in the most compact form possible. And then, as I said, if I had a laser pointer, out in the motor pool building, we have 4 pieces of equipment that don't need to be in conditioned space, but ideally do need to be under a roof. So we're relying on that component. And then there is a small mezzanine. So when we went through the programming effort and the square footage and the budget, one of the first things we realized is we really need to work to stay on 1 floor, because 2 stories gets very expensive. That said, we did land on a small mezzanine. This mezzanine serves 3 purposes. It serves as the main mechanical distribution room for the building. It serves as a secondary electric room for future batteries and solar array control equipment, and then a mezzanine for storage and for training. So we fit all of that in 23,818 gross square feet. So we didn't hit 22, but we came close. So if we could, I hope everyone's seen the video. It's been passed around a lot, but we'll just take a quick run through this. So after we jump out of the plane, come down Elm Street. So across the community center, so we are impacting the community center at the front of the community center slightly, so we'll be realigning that road. This is coming on that public area. So this is the small museum showing the historic apparatus through a glass door. So it'd actually be an operable door. The 3 windows are for the training room, and then across the apparatus bay. We are bringing in some daylight into the apparatus bay. And then this is the service end. This is where that gear room and decontamination room are. Coming around to the back side, so the rear of the building has the additional bays. So exactly how the apparatus is staged in the building can be very flexible. So each bay can be manipulated. There are some service equipment back by the motor pool building. That's our staff entrance coming around. This is the admin wing. So this is the public side. This is where parking will be for both the fire department and the community center. And just because somebody asked, in a rough count, we're providing the same parking that's there on site today. It's just in a more organized fashion. I don't know if they're laughing at the count or the more organized fashion. So, and then in front of the display area, the small museum, is the outside sort of formal piece of the memorial, where there's a lot of memorial benches and stones that we're looking to relocate. We've engaged a landscape architect to help develop that design. And I believe, I've got some other thoughts. It's been a long day. All right. Okay, so other thoughts. We did conduct that energy charrette that I talked about very early in the process. More importantly, what I didn't say is we continued that process through as we were developing the design. So as we got more information, we updated the energy model. I think we met with the energy committee 3 times, thank you, Seth. And so it was really an ongoing process. We would foresee that process continuing should this vote pass and we move into the next phase of design. We landed, after a lot of conversation, we landed for a mechanical system that is a water source heat pump. So many people are probably familiar with geothermal heating. So this is, water source heat pumps is the inside equipment that's typically connected to ground source. We're just not doing the wells because it didn't fit within your budget. So we're connecting it to another heat source, which is a pellet boiler, and heat rejection, which is a cooling tower. So it's affordable first cost, it's operational, it gives you a chance to integrate PV and reduce the overall operation expenses, and it's consistent with the energy goals for the town that we've been given. So we've improved the building envelope. We're significantly higher than code in terms of our building energy performance, thermal performance. At least that's the goal that we've set, and I believe we will achieve that. We've integrated a rainwater collection system. So this was a twofold approach. Everyone noticed the flat roof. Everyone saw the flat roof, right? So that was a twofold decision. One is to maximize the roof size for a future PV array, but also because it helps with the rainwater collection system. So this is going to ease the stormwater discharge into those wetlands that are neighboring, but it also gives us a source of water that we can use for truck washing and truck filling, which is a really important aspect for the fire service. And then we've got a heavily zoned ventilation control. So Chief talked a lot about contaminants and the controls. Part of the building design is not only to keep the gear and the decontamination as far away from the residents as possible, but also to have a series of airlocks through the apparatus bay, and then use heavy filtration and air changes to make sure that any potential contaminants that get in the building are really contained in that area and then dealt with properly. And then finally, as I said, we've planned the building for a future solar array. We've had conversations about numerous sizes. If you were to fill the roof, we've done a rough calculation, it would be about a 300 kilowatt system. We plan for future battery storage units. One of the things that we realized is there's some expensive electric charges that come along with it. So if we could integrate a battery system, not only for the solar storage, but then we could do what's called peak shaving, which would help reduce your overall cost. And we've planned for future EV charging stations out in the parking lot, but also integrated provisions if and when electric apparatus become available and viable, that it could be integrated into the building in the future without having to really reconstruct major pieces of the building. So I'd like to say we're future-proofing the building. I would say we're doing the best we can based on what we know today. All right, let's talk about the budget. I get to have a first crack at it because the budget's out there. At this point, because we have done what we consider schematic design, this is not full design, not full blueprints, we're not bid ready. The budget that we've developed is all about managing the town's risk. We want to present a budget because we only get one shot at this, and I say this a lot to all the towns. Really, you're entrusting us with a pot of money, and we need to prove to you that we can deliver the project for that pot of money. And we have done extensive work in managing those risks and having proper contingencies and working with the committee through a couple series of value engineerings to really make wise decisions to say what we're presenting today is on the budget, and this is not just a guess at what the project's going to cost. Keith can talk more about that. I'm going to put him on the spot. All right, but the budget isn't just about construction. There's more to it than that. So we do have construction costs, that's the biggest piece of it, but then we have furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and then we have contingencies. Contingencies are important because, as I said, we're not 100% done with design. There's probably a whole bunch of things that you haven't told me you want that we need to figure out how to get in the budget. So we have contingencies to do that. Not to mention, construction is just inherently risky. Things change, things happen, and that's just the nature of it. The success of a project isn't a problem-free project. It's how you deal with those problems and how you're prepared to deal with them. So I would say in our budget and in our process and with the group that we've worked with so far, you're very well prepared to deal with the problems and make sure that this is successful and I can be welcome at the ribbon cutting. So, construction costs, $11.3 million. I said we were 23,818 gross square feet, $11.3 million. About $465 a square foot, if I did the math right. Then we have a budget of $350,000 for furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And then we have $450,000 in owner's contingency. There are also contingencies built into that $11.3 million. And that arrives at a proposed $12.1 million project cost. And with that, I think Keith can come up and talk in more detail about how he developed it.
Thank you, Jason.
This is pretty exciting. Great group of people. Happy to be participating in this process, representing Harvey as their Director of Pre-Construction Planning. We got on board a year ago, as Steph had indicated. We've been part and parcel of the design and engineering selection process and these hard discussions that we've had to make over the past number of months since S&P got involved. Jason alluded to how comfortable we feel relative to the cost, as dynamic as they might be, as we all know, going to any home improvement store and what things have looked like over the past number of years. Kudos to the community for selecting construction management at risk for delivery because we are at the table on your behalf. We're here as part of the team. We're not here as a closed door operation. We're here open door and open book delivery, so you see everything that we see. And that's the best way to go into a project, especially one with such an investment for the community. S&P provided Harvey with a set of schematic designs. As Jason alluded to, we're not at bid documents, we're not at construction documents, we don't have the level of detail, but the expertise that we bring to the table is over 2,300 vendors, suppliers, and subcontractors in our database in the New Hampshire, greater New Hampshire area that allow us to get a feel for what the market's giving us. We're 7 people in our pre-construction department that support that effort, and we're on the phone every day, emails every day with all sorts of suppliers and trade partners that give us real-time information. Schematic documents were given to us in early December, a great time to go out to the community when you've got holidays in hand, but we did our best. So early January, we were able to present to the committee, and we talked about value engineering and value management because we were over budget by about 10%, a little bit more than 10%, actually, probably about 13%. That's a tough percentage over, right? We're not going to come here tonight to talk about accepting something that's that far over budget. So we had some discussions about how can we accomplish some savings, how can we establish a better and more appropriate budget that lives within the goals that we were given. Back up a bit, in order to get to that number, we actually invited 189 suppliers, vendors, and subcontractors to our bidding process. We got 78 proposals across the whole gamut of services provided. So it's a test, and it was actually a really welcome involvement of the community's trade partners to give us real-life, real-time information. So we went through that deep value engineering, value management task, and which resulted in our proposal today at $11.3 million on the construction cost side of things for a total of 12.1. As much as we can tell you today that this is what it's going to cost, we're not at a point to say this is what it's going to cost because we have a lot more to do. But the support that we have right now is that this project, we are very comfortable with the collaborative effort that we've been having with all those involved. That when we get to developing the design, should it be accepted tonight, we'll have those hard conversations, we'll have those discussions that'll say, this is what our charge is, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to get there. And we're going to do that collaboratively and openly so that we can deliver a project that the community is happy with. So this is real-time, real-life information. It's not just a dart at a dartboard. Have faith and confidence that we've hit the market in the past number of months, and we are in touch with the market on a daily basis to know that this is a solid budget for this project as it's currently designed. I think that's pretty much how much you wanted me to hit on that, and I'm happy to take any questions when we get to that point of discussion, but I think it heads over to Nicole at this point.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, everyone. We're getting there, I promise. I've got 3 slides and I'll get through them pretty quickly. All right, so when Seth came to me and said that we had a budget and we were ready to move it forward to the Budget Committee and the Select Board for their consideration, I met with Finance Director Lily Gilligan, and she and I started working on the funding, what the funding could possibly look like for the community. Lily, back in January, started peppering the Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank with questions about what do you think the rates are going to be, what do you think the possible scenarios might look like, and getting some projections. And we've been getting regular updates on those ever since. So if you've got some numbers that came from the budget meetings and the public hearing and maybe the deliberative session that are a little bit different from what you're about to see, it's because we have been constantly going back, checking those rates again, checking those numbers again, and refining what we are presenting to you tonight. So here up on the screen and on the last page of your handout, you'll see the proposed funding. Select Board and Budget Committee reviewed the two different bonding scenarios, a 20-year term at 3.5% or a 30-year term at 4%. They chose the 20-year term because it saved over the course of the entire bond $2,668,974 in interest. So what you see in your handout and up on the screen now is a 20-year term at 3.5%. The total principal paid will be $10,570,193. The interest cost will be $3,884,546, bringing the total cost of the bond, the proposed bond, to $14,454,739. Well, like Seth said earlier, it's probably not what you're actually interested in. What you want to know is how much is it going to cost you. So our first full year payment, which won't be made until fiscal year 2026, will be we are estimating, and this is again a very conservative estimate, but based on what we know of the bond market right now, that payment will be $898,466. What we're raising and appropriating tonight, that $305,000, that's the first half year payment. That's the payment that we'll be making in fiscal year 25, but that's only a half payment. And then the first full year impact on tax rate would be 76 cents. So, sorry, per thousand. So the total, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead on the slides. The total project cost of $12 million. is the full project cost. But if you take out what we have as the remaining balance of the planning bond, and that's the money that Seth and the building committee had to work with S&P, to work with Harvey, to work with HTA, they have $480,000 left over, meaning that the remaining amount to raise is $11,670,193. The selectmen then chose to use $1.1 million of fund balance to further reduce that amount, and that brings us the total project cost to bond, which is $10,570,193. And then we get to the bonding slide that I just went over ahead. But as you can see there, again, the first full year impact on the tax rate is 76 cents per thousand. So what does that actually mean? So for about every $100,000 of valuation that a particular piece of property has, it's going to cost $76.12. If your property is valued at $300,000, it's going to cost $228.36 a year for that first payment. At first payment, if you have a $400,000 property, it would be $304.48. And if your property is valued at $500,000, that first full year payment would be $380.60. However, every year that bond payment's going to drop because we pay, it's a type of bonding structure called level payment. And that means every year the principal amount that we pay is going to be the same amount. So every year we'd be paying an estimated $528,510 towards the bond. And then each year the interest rate would drop. And so we would be paying in the first year an estimated $370,000. In the 10th year, $203,000. And the 20th year, the interest rate goes down to below $20,000. And you can see that, if you look at the end of that column, each year, the proposed bond impact on the tax rate drops along with that. And that's it.
Thank you, Nicole.
All right, I think you've heard the full presentation. A lot of information there, perhaps some questions and comments. So if you'd like to speak up, please step up to the microphone here. Yes, sir.
Peter Kingsley from Peterborough. There's a typographical mistake on the last slide. The total payment, it says $371,000, should be $731,000. The tax rate is fine, but just want to let people know there was a typographical mistake.
All right, sir. Next, yes.
Bruce Marcus, the interest rate, that 3.5%, is that locked in? Or are we going to be paying 8% the way it is right now?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
You said the bond interest rate is 3.5%?
Yes, that's what it was when the municipal bond bank went to its sale in January.
Okay, now it's up around 7.5%.
No, the municipal bond interest rates are a lot different from consumer interest rates or individual interest rates. It's a much different bond market. So the interest rates tend to be a lot lower because the people who are buying municipal bonds are looking for very safe bets.
Are we a safe bet?
Yes.
It did look like it a couple of years ago.
Yeah, because, so to explain, we don't have like a Moody's rating or anything like that. What we do is we go to bond to the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank. They pool all of the different communities that are going out to bond in that particular time. And so we'll be bundled with many other communities, and then they sell the whole package together. It's one of the other reasons why we get much lower rates.
That's good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Kathleen R. Allen. I was totally against the new fire station until after many years not being in there getting the tour. We definitely need it. And I've never been in an ambulance until Thanksgiving, thanks to the guys who took me. I have 3 questions. 2 of them I've been waiting for answers to and haven't had answers. One is this new fire station going to be built so that the layer that's put up will tolerate a second layer above if down the road we decide we want to expand vertically?
Okay, why don't you go ahead with all of your questions, and then we'll have somebody answer them.
And the second one I've had is I've gotten different answers even out of people at the tables for the fire station. What is the implication, the cost factor, but where is this path going to go? I've heard everything from Scott Fair all the way to Shaw's, and then I heard about this wide. So I'd like an answer on the sidewalk. And then the third question came up during the presentation tonight. If there aren't lights put out, there's going to be any thought to having some kind of an emergency light to stop the traffic on 101, which can sometimes be a nightmare to get out off of Elm Street.
Okay, thank you. Who would like to address those issues? Yes, sir.
Apparently I'm first up on the question. So first question of, is the building designed for a second floor? The answer is no, it is not. In looking at the program and the apparatus and the needs, looking forward for the next, everybody wants to say 50 years, but reasonable planning is 20. So looking at the growth of the 20 years, the facility as designed won't need an expansion. Apparatus will change in and out. It's not additional apparatus. It will be purchasing new to replace outdated equipment. And the admin and residential is designed to accommodate the anticipated growth. So second floor would not be necessary. That, and practically speaking, we've done buildings where second floors were anticipated but never built. It's a significant upfront cost, and as codes change, it's really not the most viable option to take on. So the second one, I believe the question was on the walkway. So if I can, sorry, I did breeze through that in my presentation. So I'm sorry, the laser pointer is not working, but on the community side of the parking lot, there's a new crossing at Elm Street that connects the existing sidewalk. There's a walkway that runs along that parking lot all the way back to Public Works and then crosses over towards the retail and then up along the side of Public Works to the new Shaw's Plaza. So it is not a walkway out on 101. Part of the layout of that was creating a sidewalk that addressed the day-to-day traffic, so people going from their cars to the community center or the fire station, but also an attempt to minimize pedestrians crossing in front of that apparatus bay. It's about 124 feet across, and in an emergency services situation, we really like to minimize pedestrians walking across that. And I think the last question is probably for you.
Thank you, sir. So as I mentioned earlier, although we're not, at this time, we're not anticipating a lot of problems. We are working with Royal Tanner's civil engineer. And most likely as we move forward, we'll work with Southwest Regional Planning on the need for a traffic study and sort of nail some of that down. I'm not leaving out the fact that potentially state DOT would be involved, where it is a state highway on 101. But that is something we certainly are considering looking at, but I think we're aware of that and we'll address that as we go forward.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a brief statement.
Would you just state your name?
Oh, yes. My name is Laura Shea, and I am born and raised here in Peterborough. And I'd just like to say, these are folks who work for the Peterborough Fire Department who are willing to put their lives on the line for us. And I think to show that we value and respect them, that we should be offering them a place to work that is a safe environment and shows that we value and respect their willingness to put their lives on the line for us. So I'm voting yes tonight, and I hope all of you will join me in that. And in addition, I'd like everyone to consider the morale, how morale will be impacted if we don't vote for this. And I think what it says if we don't vote for this is that we don't respect them. And it's hard to attract and retain a team if we don't show that we value and respect them and believe in their morale and their safety and security. So please join me in voting yes today. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Seth Kuhn. I live on Elm Street, and I brought this up at one of the other meetings about pedestrian traffic on Elm Street.
Speak a little closer.
I'm talking about the pedestrian traffic, foot traffic on Elm Street. Many school kids walk up and down there. During the summer, there's a summer camp up, and they use Elm Street for different things. Cars speed up and down that, all the way up to the top end. What type of traffic study is going to be done, or will be done, to help out those firemen traverse that and not injure traffic and kids walking to school? Thank you.
Okay. Is that yours, Seth?
Yeah. And there's going to be a crosswalk. You got to cross on the street to the walkway to shops.
Second question first, yes, there is a crosswalk as part of the budget and the project. First answer, similar to what Chief Walker said, yes, we're going to engage with our civil engineering firm and relevant regional planning to evaluate traffic and make sure that we are providing a safe site for not only the fire station and their response, but for the community that will encompass that area as well. So yes, that is part of our design and development if this advances.
Yes.
My name is Loretta Laurinaitis, and I just want to say from the outset, I am in support of the fire station. So my question does not have to do with questioning the need for that in this community. But I was wondering if there was some way that TIF districts could contribute financially to this. Because we just had that ballot, the voting yesterday, and there were 3 articles for the expendable trust funds. For West Peterborough TIF, it was for $1,400,000. And the West Peterborough TIF is to end in 2025. And my understanding is that that money in the trust fund, even if it's not used at the time the TIF ends, they will keep it and continue to use it for projects that they have developed. Now, I don't think that is necessarily standard with TIF districts, but that's not really the issue for me. The Greater Downtown TIF ends in 2035. It currently has approximately $700,000 in the expendable trust funds. South Peterborough TIF ends in 2038, and it has $2,644,000 in that expendable trust fund. I know that the town has the TIF districts paid the town $10,000 a year for administrative costs. So my question is whether the town, the budget committee, the select board administration could consider whether there would be a way to ask for some money from the TIF districts to contribute to the fire station bond, since it is something that everybody is going to benefit from. So that's my question.
Okay, thank you. Nicole?
As currently laid out, the proposed fire station on Elm Street is not within a TIF district, so we would not be able to use TIF funds to support the project or the bond.
All right. Yes? Yeah, please.
Hi everyone, Kirsten Armstrong. Quick question about costs. You mentioned the design isn't complete, so what percent complete are the design development documents? What's it going to take to get to the point where they're actually sent out to bid and we know what the actual cost is? Since we're being asked to vote on a certain number, it sounds like that number isn't quite finalized. And as a follow-up to that, how would any change orders be handled?
All right, gentlemen, that sounds like one for you folks. All right?
I told you it was collaborative, right? Come on now.
Not that collaborative. Excellent question. I really do appreciate that. Part of that is what happens after tonight, right? What are the unknowns? What are the risks? And that gets to that risk management piece. In terms of level of complete, so what I do is not necessarily easy to explain, but I would say we're roughly 20% complete with documents. That said, we have filled a whole list of assumptions. So we did a set of drawings, and we have a complete engineering team. I failed to mention that in my presentation. There's a whole team behind me of engineers covering all aspects of that. So we have scoped out the project, and that is what they budgeted. Excuse me, budgeted. So on 20% complete documents, roughly. But again, we have predicted, because this is what we do. We have predicted what the complete design cost is going to be based on those assumptions. That said, there's 1,000 decisions left to make over the next 8 months, and some of those things will vary, but they'll be very, very minor in terms of what the end facility will be. Did I cover everything?
No, I got more.
All right.
So, I wouldn't be scared by the 20%, right? So that's a long way from 100. Speaking as a licensed architect, but not for this job. Drawings are never done. You could always be doing something, right? I mean, we can relate to that in anything we do in our personal lives. So 20% is not scary because we've put in contingencies and allowances and assumptions based on what we know takes to build the project. And I'm sorry if I misrepresented the number. The number is 11.3 for construction, 12.1 for total project. That is what we're going to meet. We've made assumptions, we've made informed decisions and allocations of funds so that we can minimize and manage that risk. Nothing is ever risk-proof, but the reason we're at the table is we analyze those risks and we allocate costs and funds for those risks to help mitigate them. And then over this next 8 months, we're going to be at the table. We're going to talk about Jason not putting another line on that paper because that costs $100,000. So that's the conversations we're going to have, and that's the reality of having us at the table, that we will manage that budget, that risk, and manage that cost. So when we come back here in January, we didn't answer that question. Drawings are going to be done by the end of the year for January timeframe, in which we will go out to bid, in which we'll have a true cost, and then that's when we execute what's called a guaranteed maximum price amendment to the contract, not to belabor that whole thing, whatever. But anyway, that's how we establish that money, and that's when we get held accountable. That GMP, guaranteed maximum price, that's what you're going to pay, and that's what our contract's going to be written for. That is what the project's going to cost. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I'm telling you today, it's not going to be more than $11.3 million.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, yes.
Marilyn Weir. I'd like to know what the projected timeline for the actual construction of the project. And I'm very much in favor of this.
I'm back. So right now we're budgeting based on earth movement, disturbed area, all the things that are associated with the project, about 16 months. And the anticipated schedule, should everything proceed forward tonight, it's designed through the rest of the year. We would bid it out over the winter and it would start next spring. So we'd be well underway with earth movement this time next year is the current plan. So then that would put you into fall of 2026 for completion.
Yes, sir. Walter Roman.
On the 3.5%, is that fixed for the life of the bond?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi there, Melissa White. I'm just curious, what is the plan for the current building? What's going to be done with that? Will it be sold so we can raise some funds for this, or is there a plan?
So we don't have a current plan for the building once the fire department's moved out. The select board in the past has talked about likely selling the property. So that will be a public process to come in the future.
Can that money then be turned over to pay towards the current, the new one, or?
The select board can choose to do any number of things with those funds, including paying down funds. Yes.
So our taxes might actually go down.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, sir. You want to step up and? Yes, sir.
Peterborough, do I get to hold the question tonight?
Pardon me?
Do I get to hold the question tonight?
Not unless somebody is yet to speak. Is there anyone else who hasn't spoken that would like to speak before we entertain that motion? Okay, is there a second to the motion? All right, again, this is a non-debatable motion. It requires a 2/3 vote. If you're in favor of calling the question, raise your paddles. If you're opposed, raise your paddles. All right, it looks pretty unanimous. So we'll declare that the debate on the motion is closed, which means that we are now ready to vote. We don't have any amendments proposed, so we will be voting on the motion as I read it at the beginning. There it is. Can you all see it? All right. The ballot box is empty. All right. If you haven't registered, you'll need to do that in order to get your ballots. I'd like to have you come up the center aisle, so queue up in the middle and then go back to your seats that way. It's currently 8:47, so the polls will remain open until 9:47. You're welcome to wait. Otherwise, after you voted, you're welcome to depart. All right, an hour has passed. The polls are closed. We're going to count the votes. for you here. There were a total of 368 votes cast, 333 yes, 34 no, which works out to just over 90% yes. Congratulations. Thank you for your attention tonight, and congratulations. We're adjourned.